Hiya! Welcome! So today I'm going to be having a look at tomorrow's, which will be October the 14th, a Saturday, 6th annual National Album Day here in the UK. So this is an event which, quite self-explanatorily, is British, possibly Irish as well, I'm not too sure, but certainly British exclusive, physical music, vinyl event. I suppose it's kind of like a British version of Record Store Day, really. And I wanted to give this year's National Album Day a little bit more coverage on my channel, because this was one that really spoke to me as a music collector and a music fan, and I'll get onto that shortly. This is the 6th event. I think it's been going since 2018, National Album Day. It doesn't have the hype of Record Store Day because that's international, and not even the Black Friday version of Record Store Day, and that gets plenty of coverage on YouTube, whereas no one out of any of the UK based record collecting video makers I watch anyway really seem to cover National Album Day. So I thought I would do so myself this year, because I think the theme around it's really interesting. I've never really been fully invested in National Album Day previously. I think I do have an album that was released exclusively for it, or re-released, because they're all reissues obviously. It would have been Black Sabbath's self-titled album. I didn't get it on or around that year's NAD, and I'm not even sure which year it was. I think it might have been the year before last, possibly. But their self-titled album, when it got reissued on like a black with purple spatter vinyl, I did pick that up, but it was sometime after the fact. So often there's stuff that kind of catches my eye a little bit for this event, but generally on the whole it kind of passes me by, and I don't really have any buyer's, the opposite of buyer's remorse, the non-buyer's remorse, like, oh, I wish I'd got that. And you often see albums that were NAD exclusives get reduced in sales later on down the line. I think the amount of product that they put out is probably limited to an extent, but not ultra limited. But I thought I'd talk about and give some recommendations and let you know what I'm picking up for this year's National Album Day tomorrow, because I really love the theme for this year. They've gone for a strict 1990s theme. All the albums here originally came out in the 1990s, so yeah, I consider myself a child of the 80s because I was born in 1980, but I'm a teenager of the 90s, and my teens is when I started really collecting music. So there's a lot of stuff here that we can talk about that I have at least a passing or more interest or remembrance of. And I thought I'd just go through all the albums that are being released tomorrow, re-released tomorrow, and give you some brief thoughts on them, let you know what I'm getting myself. I've pre-ordered 2 NAD 2023 reissues, but there's at least a couple more that have caught my eye, and I might try and get them later on down the line, perhaps if they go on sale, and get a bit of money off, because while I'd like them, I'm not desperate for them. So as time of me recording, and I may have changed my mind and decided to pre-order more, but I've just pre-ordered 2 of these albums out of this list here, but there is others that I may try and pick up later on. We'll start with how it is on the website in alphabetical order. The first one is Happy Nation by Ace of Base. So this is coming out as a limited edition picture disc for the first time, and I already have this album. I do like Ace of Base. I used to have this on cassette years ago, back in 1993 it would have been. I've got it as part of the All That She Wants 4-album LP set that I picked up 2 or 3 years ago now. But if I'd not got that particular box set, then I'd be very tempted to pick up, because I do like picture discs as well. I like Ace of Base, but this isn't one that's on my want list, simply because I'm not doubling up on that group. I do like the album, and I would recommend that. Next up is Ugly Beautiful by Baby Bird. So the National Album Day website calls it the classic brackets anti-Britpop album issued on vinyl for the first time since its 1996 release. This is one that I think I would like to have. I've not pre-ordered this one, but I may well get it if I see it on sale, like in months to come or whatever. And if I don't get it, I don't get it. But I did like Baby Bird. I had a couple of their CD singles back in the mid-90s. Good Night and You're Gorgeous. I mean, You're Gorgeous is the song that everyone remembers. It was admittedly overplayed on radio in 1996, but it was a great pop song, indie pop. Baby Bird, I think it's his name, the guy behind it was Stephen Jones from Sheffield, if memory serves. I may well attempt to buy that at some point because I think I would really enjoy that. Next one is Belinda Carlisle, Live Your Life Be Free. Apparently this was her 4th solo album, and this one's also coming out as a limited edition picture disc. So I can't really speak about that. I remember the single off it, the title track, Live Your Life Be Free. It does list all 4 singles there, but it's only the title track that I'm really familiar with. Not one for me, that, but I don't dislike Belinda Carlisle. I think that'd be a nice pickup for anyone who's a fan of hers and or the Go-Go's. Next up is Blur, Modern Life is Rubbish, and it's been 30 years since that came out. Wow, crazy how time flies. It's coming out for National Album Day tomorrow on 2LP transparent orange vinyl. Ironically enough, I did buy this album when I was a teenager, a few years after it came out, maybe about 3 or 4 years after it came out. But I bought it for my brother, and I don't think he really liked it. He was going off Britpop and stuff, and moving on to like gangster rap and stuff like that. I know, from one extreme to the other. I bought him on CD. I am very kind of on the fence with Blur, and I always have been, really. Some of their singles I think are really good, and then others I just think are kind of rubbish, really. Pardon the pun. So nice reissue, I'm sure, particularly if you're a big Blur collector, but not for me, that one. Next one is quite a surprising choice, this, but it qualifies because it came out in 1997 originally, and it's the 30th, wow, studio album from Bob Dylan, Time Out of Mind. Doesn't say if it's on coloured / patterned vinyl, this. It's just giving a little bit of a blurb about the album and the recording and everything. Nothing really to say about that. I'm not a Bob Dylan fan. I respect his contributions and, you know, his way with prose, etc. But yeah, nothing that I particularly am interested in. But this isn't just about what I want and what I'm getting. This is an informative video. Hopefully it will be, and you can make your own minds up. And of course, I urge you to check out the National Album Day website, which I'm looking at now, and you can drill down and get further information. As for where all these are available, by the way, I think it's generally pretty much most of your prominent indie and maybe bigger than indie record store websites, you know, Sound of Vinyl downwards. And I think HMV will have these, so there'll probably be some in-store pickups as well from HMV, and no doubt other independent bricks and mortar record shops. So the next album, and there's a lot here, I'm really impressed with the choice. I don't know if this is the biggest selection ever for a National Album Day. It probably isn't. They probably have this sort of amount every year, but because it was a 90s theme and I'd heard of a lot in here, although there's some that I've never heard of, I thought I would give this event some extra coverage on the channel. So next one's International Velvet by Catatonia. This was their 2nd album. I do own one of their albums on mini disc. I think this is one I have been kind of half looking out for on mini disc over the years, but it's just passed me by. This one is pressed on recycled coloured vinyl that reuses material and clippings from previous pressings, so the result being that each record, each vinyl as it says here, is unique with its own colour combination, therefore the colour you receive will be randomised. Some of the singles on here that I remember are Mulder and Scully, I'm the Mob, great single. I think I had that on CD single years ago, and Strange Glue I believe was a single as well. Don't think I would pick that up unless I saw it on a big reduction, really. International Velvet. Next one is Girl by Danny, and that'll be as in Danny Minogue, presumably. Remastered reissue of Danny's hit 90s album, which will be heavily promoted by Danny. and it includes an expanded CD box set. So we've actually got some CD action going on here. Very little information about that, and it's not something I'd want anyway. I'm not a Danny Minogue fan. Next up is Dinosaur Jr., Where You Been, and this is a 30th anniversary edition of their indie rock classic from '93 on double splatter vinyl. Not for me again. Not really interested in Dinosaur Jr. I do know of them, but I couldn't speak on them, and I've got no real need to want to go and seek them out and investigate them more. This next one is one I'm not familiar with this whatsoever. It's by an actor group called Duster, and the album is Stratosphere, and it's the 25th anniversary edition. Doesn't say about what type of vinyl it's on, so it could just be a standard black vinyl reissue. Don't know who Duster are. Yeah, I'm just looking at the bump here. Like it feels like some of these descriptions and info passages have been written by different people, as some are quite sort of in depth and others aren't. This one is kind of just using old magazine quotes and stuff, really, and website review pieces. Yeah, so I can't speak on that at all. Don't know who Duster are. If anyone does, let me know in the comments, obviously. Next up is Always and Forever by Eternal. This was their debut studio album. They were, of course, a UK girl group, you know, R&B, soul, that sort of thing. Another one that's on recycled vinyl, so you're going to get some sort of random colour, basically. I do like, and I've talked about recycled vinyl a little bit when I did my sit-down discussion about multi-formatting for vinyl albums in particular. I did talk briefly about recycled vinyl, and that I think, you know, it ought to really be getting more prominent now. So it's good to see that a fair few of, or at least a couple so far, of the NAD releases are on recycled. That's not one that I want, though. I was never particularly bothered about Eternal. Next up is one I do have on mini disc. It's Fatboy Slim, You've Come a Long Way, Baby. This was his second solo or second album credited to Norman Cooker's Fatboy Slim. It's got some big singles on here. Rockefeller Skank, Gangster Trippin', Praise You, Right Here, Right Now. Great album, this. Not one that I want to double up on and get on vinyl as well. And it is a half-speed master, this. So theoretically it will be sounding even better than ever if you purchase this tomorrow or after the fact. Garbage version 2.0. This came out, 1998. Yeah, I do remember when this came out. For some reason, the sleeve of this always brings back memories. I never owned the album. I did own one of the singles off it, When I Grow Up. Brilliant single, that one of my favourites of that year. Fantastic Garbage single, that if you've never heard it before, and you should have done, really, as it was a fairly big hit. It's coming out on transparent blue coloured vinyl tomorrow. I would possibly pick this up on a discount, I think, but it's not one that I really want to own. As much as I love When I Grow Up, and the other single off it, I think I'm Paranoid, is pretty good, but I didn't like it half as much as When I Grow Up. Next, Genuine The Bachelor. Genuine was or maybe still is, an R&B singer from America. This was his debut album. It was produced by Timbaland, apparently, originally out in October '96. Yeah, I vaguely remember him sort of being in and around the charts, but I wasn't into R&B at that point. Yeah, I've got into hip-hop that obviously has R&B elements in subsequent years, but this sort of R&B urban crooner kind of vibe that Genuine always gave off wasn't for me. It says one of the singles it features is When Doves Cry, so I'm assuming that's a cover of the Prince song. I didn't actually know he covered that. Next, Various Artists Help. Oh, there's a load of information about this, but I won't go into it all. You can read all this for yourself on the NAD website, obviously. They're saying it's strictly limited to 2,000 copies. Various Artists Help. It's the 30th anniversary edition of the War Child charity album. So yeah, loads of different acts. I'll just go through a few of them. Oasis and Friends, the Boo Radleys, Stone Roses, Orbital, Portishead, Suede, Charlatans versus the Chemical Brothers, Sinead O'Connor, Manic Street Preachers, Terrorvision, the One World Orchestra, who of course were Bill Drummond and Jimmy Cauty, aka the Jams, aka the KLF, Terry Hall, Neneh Cherry, Blur, Paul McCartney, Paul Weller, blah blah, loads of big names on this. It'd be interesting to know if this is still like a charity thing, really. I don't know if War Child is a charity that still exists or whether it's like morphed into something different. It being only limited to 2,000 copies makes me think this isn't necessarily a charity release all over again. There again, I think if I saw it discounted I'd get it, but I'm not actually bothered really. Then we have Idlewild and Captain, another recycled vinyl issue. I'm trying to find out if this was a debut album or like a live one. It's difficult to tell. Idlewild from Scotland, kind of post Britpop, I would call them. I had one of their CD singles back in, I think, either the very late 90s or the early 2000s. But I've never been compelled to collect them album-wise, really. So I couldn't really speak about Captain by Idlewild, really. Lots to go through here. Next is Grace by Jeff Buckley. This is an album that I know is kind of one of those, especially because Jeff Buckley was an artist who died at a young age. It's one of those that always seems to be in people's 100 or whatever albums you must listen to sort of lists, really, but it's not one that I've ever been compelled to listen to. Doesn't say about what kind of vinyl pressing it is, but it's a reissue of his only studio album that originally came out in August 1994, and of course it's got his cover of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah on it. Left Field with Leftism, their debut album from 1995 features would be Open Up, I believe, featuring John Lydon from Sex Pistols and Pill. Yes, looking at the information, not an awful lot really else I can say about it. I think this is one that has been out on mini disc, and I've thought, well, if I see it and it's not too ridiculously priced, I'd pick it up on MD, but no, and I'm not desperate for it anyway. I'm sure I'd enjoy that album, but not one for me for National Album Day. Ocean Drive by Lighthouse Family. Lighthouse Family were big and they were all over the place, kind of more towards, I would say, the late 90s. What was Ocean Drive? Was that their first album or their second one? Not sure, actually. I'm assuming it's the first album. But, yeah, they were all over the radio. I mean, kind of a little bit sort of saccharine at times, but I did love their single High from 1998, I think that was, and that would have been not on this album. I think that was on the one afterwards. No, I'm not going to be interested in that. Next up is Mark Almond's Tenement Symphony. This is another one, there's not much information, but it talks about an expanded CD box set as well. So whether that's, I'm assuming those are like separate and they're nothing particularly to do with National Album Day, because that's meant to be strictly vinyl, but you can buy certain CD sets like this one and what was the other one, Danny Minogue. I've got a feeling this will be his album that had the Gene Pitney duet on it, but I'm not sure. I'd possibly pick that up on a whim for cheap. Next up, we've got some hip-hop. It's Nas, It Was Written. This was his second studio album, released in 1996. I don't mind Nas. I've listened to a bit of his stuff. I don't own any of his albums or singles, but he features as a featured artist, as you do, on certain Notorious B.I.G. in particular albums that I've got. And he's an alright rapper. I think he's pretty good, or he was pretty good. I don't really hear an awful lot from him now. But it's not one that I'm keen to get that particularly. Alright, here we go. Here's one that I have pre-ordered. This one will be coming hopefully tomorrow or very soon after National Album Day on Saturday the 14th of October, and it's Dreamland by Robert Miles. So I owned this as a teenager on CD in the 90s. It's had one or two vinyl reissues in relatively recent years, I think, because I was tempted to pick one up off Discogs not too long ago, and I think maybe just the total price, because it would have been from Europe somewhere, including taxes, postage, etc., just put me off a little bit. So I'm glad this is getting a reissue again. It don't really matter which pressing, which type of vinyl I have, I just want this album again. So of course it had the massive single Children on it, and also one of my all-time favourite singles, One on One, featuring Maria Naylor on vocals. Absolutely love that track so much. Always liked this album, you know, Robert Miles, the late Robert Miles, of course. When was it he passed away? It was... God, it feels like it's getting on for about 10 years now. But Italian dance artist, you know, trance pioneer, you would say. I think this is out on just standard black vinyl. It doesn't say, but when I was pre-ordering it from Townsend Music, I think they said it was just on standard black, which is fine. So I'm really looking forward to getting that. That is, of course, because I'm buying it, a big recommendation from me. Next up is Simply Red Blue. They list all the tracks that are on here. I did have a single off this, actually, even though I've never considered myself to be a Simply Red fan. I did have the CD single of Say You Love Me, which was the lead single from this. In fact, actually, technically, I had two singles off it because I didn't realise it also includes the Simply Red cover of Night Nurse on it, which technically, when I had the single, it was credited to Sly and Robbie featuring Simply Red. But I didn't actually know a version of it was on this album, Blue. But Say You Love Me, I'm not really into kind of middle-of-the-road ballads particularly, but something about that song I always really liked. I don't want this album, though, even though it's got two singles, two tracks on it that I really like. He's also covered The Air That I Breathe on here as well, which was the Hollies, weren't it? Next up, this one, I've no idea what this is whatsoever. It's Songs, Ohio, Access and Ace. So I'm going to have to read some of the bump here. Access and Ace stood to be Songs, Ohio's third album released in 1999. Jason Molina is assisted by Jeff Cummins of Party Girls, Michael Krasner, The Lofty Pillars, Boxhead Ensemble, blah blah blah, Joe Ferguson from Pinetop 7, Dave Pavkovich from Boxhead Ensemble, Julie Liu from Rex, and Edith Frost. This has had me completely stumped. It says it's repressed on coloured vinyl, but it doesn't say what colour it is. It kind of gives the impression it might be gold, looking at the sleeve of it. What is this? If anyone knows, then please let me know. That is not something that I'm familiar with whatsoever. That could have come out any time. That could have been a brand new release, for all I knew. But it's been lumped in this 90s themed National Album Day. Next up is Purple by Stone Temple Pilots. That was their second studio album. This one's another one out on Recycled, so your colour will differ from presumably the next man's cover, or woman. Let's not be sexist. I think I tried to get into Stone Temple Pilots a little bit when everyone was kind of into Nirvana and grunge and what have you. And I was also quite an Aerosmith fan for a little while in my, I would say, early teens, kind of 93, 94, before I kind of decided, no, it's mainly electro pop and indie that I like, you know, New Order, Pet Shop Boys, etc. I tried to get into them and I couldn't really. Nothing on there is particularly familiar. I might have heard Vaseline. That was possibly a single that I maybe saw or heard somewhere. So not a recommendation because it's not something I've heard or want to get. Oh, we've got another one of these songs, Ohio things here. Looks like this is going to be out on blue vinyl, looking at the sleeve. This is self-titled. In a 1997 debut album release, singer-guitarist Jason Molina unfolds the beginning chapter of the influential and essential discography of Songs, Ohio. The self-titled album, sometimes referred to as the Black Album, was recorded on an 8-track over the span of one afternoon. Blah 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 blah. I haven't a Scooby-Doo. Next we go on to Bandwagonesque by Teenage Fanclub from Scotland. That was their third album. It was released on Creation originally in 1991, and it was voted Album of the Year for 91 by American magazine Spin, famously beating Nirvana's Nevermind. Yeah, I vaguely remember Teenage Fanclub. I think they were an act who I would mainly only sort of know from occasional appearances in the UK Top 40. And then when they would have had maybe a track played every so often on the indie chart, on the chart show, probably would be an album that I'd probably at least mildly enjoy, maybe, if not thoroughly enjoy, but not one that I'm after. So here's the second one that I've pre-ordered. This one is on the way as of me recording this. And it's the debut Cause album, Forgiven Not Forgotten. So I do already own this album, I've got it on mini disc, but I am a big Cause fan. I don't mind doubling up with this. This did get a vinyl reissue, I think on Music on Vinyl some years ago, but the copies were limited, and that on the aftermarket goes for ridiculous money. I think it's like 3 digits it goes for. So it's really good that it's getting another vinyl reissue. I'd like them to reissue Talk on Corners, to be honest, because that's my very favourite Cause album. But this one was kind of like my number one, and then Robert Miles was number 2, really, for my definite pickups for NAD. It's on recycled vinyl. There's a lot on recycled. I think that's really good that a lot of these are coming out on previously used wax. So I won't know what colour I get until I open it. And of course, this and Dreamland by Robert Miles I will be showing in what will presumably be the next or an upcoming Records Roundup video when I've got them. Yeah, I think the Cause are actually recording a new album at the moment, or they might have almost finished it. As of the time of me recording this video, they were putting up pictures of them in the studio on Instagram and saying, watch this space. So it's obvious they're announcing a new album. They've been touring a lot more lately as a group. You know, Andrea and Sharon have had solo records come out. But it was obvious they were kind of getting back together, the 4 siblings, and it was a safe bet that they would be releasing a new album. So it might have been announced by the time this video comes out what the new album's called, its release date, but if it's not, I think that announcement's going to be coming very, very soon. But in the meantime, Forgiven Not Forgotten gets a long overdue second vinyl issue, and I'm looking forward to listening to it on vinyl for the first time, even though I have the mini disc, so I don't really need it, but it's the Cause. I'm going to double up on the Cause as and when, which is not going to be easy because I think Forgiven Not Forgotten is the only album so far that is out on vinyl from the Cause. Next up is a Various Artists album, and it's The Virgin Suicides. So this looks like a film soundtrack. I thought The Virgin Suicides sounded vaguely familiar. It's got music from Todd Rundgren, Boston, Hart, Sloan, The Hollies, Al Green, Gilbert O'Sullivan, 10cc, Styx, 2 tracks by Air. So not very 90s, is it? But the film would have come out in the 90s, and therefore the soundtrack. But that's all kind of 70s stuff, really, isn't it? On recycled vinyl once again. It looks like the film was directed by Sofia Coppola. I have never seen the film. Some of the songs on it I think are pretty good. Some are a little bit kind of American wuss rock or stadium rock. Not an album for me, but if you like the film, then that might be a nice addition to go with it, really. Next up is Wu-Tang Clan, Enter the Wu-Tang. So this was their debut album from '93. Don't think it says if it's on coloured vinyl or not. Nothing really to say about it. Never properly got into Wu-Tang Clan, even though there is a fair amount of hip-hop and rap that I do like. I'm sure I would get into Wu-Tang more if I gave them more of a chance. A lot of it is just having the time, really, into it, and the inclination as well. I suppose it's good that it's getting a reissue. I'm assuming it's probably relatively difficult to get on original pressing vinyl, or expensive to get, I don't know. I would say that's a mild recommendation from me if you're into that sort of thing, but I couldn't fully recommend it. 808 State, Excel. This was their 3rd studio album from 1991. It's got the track Spanish Heart, which features vocals from Bernard Sumner of New Order. It's annoying me that I can't actually remember that. I will have heard that track, and I like to think that I'm up to date and abreast of anything that a New Order member does outside of New Order. And I just can't think of Spanish Heart. I know of it, and I must have heard it. I'll have to go and listen to that again for the first time in donkey's years later on. And XL's coming out as a limited edition 140-gram blue disc. I like 808 State, that'd be alright. That'd be a pretty good one. Still loads more to go. I didn't realise exactly how many. Well, this could be a long video actually, so I'll try and get through these a little bit quicker as I'm just kind of sat here waffling on really. Debut album from the Cranberries. Everybody else is doing it, so why can't we? It sold 5 million in the US and 600,000 in the UK. This one is out on 140 gram dark green vinyl tomorrow and features Linger and Dreams. I think I would pick this up on a discount actually, and I know the Cranberries, and it's sad what happened to Dolores O'Riordan. That lineup obviously will never release anything again. But there have been a lot of Cranberries reissues over the past few years, particularly since her passing. I think if I bought this one, I'd probably be tempted because, you know, I love Irish music and Irish culture, and although, you know, they're not an Irish music as in flutes and fiddles and stuff, I think I would really get more into the Cranberries. I did like generally most, if not all, of their singles, but never had any of their albums. But maybe I'll try and pick that one up down the line, to be honest. Next is Laid by James. James had been going, I think, for a good 10 years or more by the time this would have come out in '93. This one's out on Transparent Red 2 LP vinyl. Laid, of course, the title track was also featured on the American Pie. It might have been the first and the second film, maybe even the third one. It was definitely on at least a couple of them. Another James album actually as well. So Gold Mother. This one's out on 2LP Gold disc, and it includes the iconic anthem, Their Words Not Mine, Sit Down, also Come Home, which was a good single from what I remember. James are alright, but I don't particularly want those. Neneh Cherry, Man. This was her third album, and although it mentions about the duet with Youssou N'Dour, 7 Seconds, I don't know if that was on here. That was 2 or 3 years before this. I don't know if they're just mentioning that because they've not really got much else to say about it. This is out on 140 gram yellow vinyl, by the way. Not one that I particularly want. I like Neneh Cherry, particularly Buffalo Stance, one of the all-time great singles for me, that. But I'm not bothered about getting that one. Next one for Rob Walker here. It's Wildwood by Paul Weller. This was his second solo album, released in '93. Of course, it had the title track as a single, and it's a 30th anniversary release. It says it's out on 140 gram coloured vinyl, but doesn't say what the colour is. Not one I'll be picking up, that. Automatic for the People, R.E.M. That was their 8th studio album. Of course, they'd been going since the early 80s, really, but they didn't make it big, even in America, till, I would say, probably the mid to late 80s. Features, some well-known singles, Drive, Everybody Hurts, Man on the Moon, and it's coming out tomorrow on 140 grams solid yellow. Tricky, Maxine K. Says here it will be released on Friday the 13th of October, so this one, for some reason, even though it's listed for National Album Day, is out today, a day before. There's 3 different versions. There's a 3 LP version on black vinyl, a 2 CD version, and then a 1 LP kind of bare bones reissue. Tricky was trip hop, weren't he? Which is something I've never really been into. Not even Massive Attack, apart from Unfinished Sympathy, which was an amazing single from the early 90s. Could never really get into them after that. Hole lived through this, the second album from '94. Of course, Hole were Courtney Love's group. And this reissue is coming out on 140 gram light rose vinyl, so that'll be similar colour presumably to the Hole logo that's on the sleeve there, like a sort of light pink. S Club and S Club, that's their debut album, or S Club 7, their debut album. Says it's out on coloured vinyl, not one that I would want. I know they hold a lot of nostalgia for people of a certain age. I mean, by the time S Club were doing the rounds, I was 18, 19, and that sort of music, that kind of pure pop music, I was never much into anyway, so not one for me. Charlotte Armour, Much Love. She was quite a big name for a little bit in the mid-90s. This one is out on recycled vinyl. You Might Need Somebody, that's the song. There again, a little bit overplayed for me, that one. It was a big hit for her. I don't think it was a #1, but it was certainly top 10 in the UK. Nothing I Want. She's another one in this sort of R&B or soul vein, really. Next is Susie and the Banshees, The Rapture. This is their final album, apparently, which I'm quite surprised about, really. I thought they'd be maybe occasionally releasing stuff to this day. Out on 140g turquoise transparent. Stereophonics, Performance and Cocktails. I've never been fond of Stereophonics. I won't get bogged down in the whys and wherefores, because this video could be going on for bloody ages. But just a group who have never done anything for me, really, and I know a lot of people really rate them. One or two of their singles are, I would say, passable, but that's about it, really. Just don't excite me at all. Anyway, their second album, Performance and Cocktails, is coming out on 140g orange vinyl tomorrow. Then, we've got another Stone Temple Pilots here. They're in a funny order, some of these, to be honest. We are down to the last 4, you'll be pleased to know. Core by Stone Temple Pilots, that's their debut album, so if you're into Stone Temple Pilots, then you can pick up their first couple of albums for National Album Day, reissued. This one is on Recycled, nothing really else to say about it. Then various artists, V4 Visions of Love and Androids. This looks quite interesting. In the midst of the UK house revolution of the early 90s, London's V4 Visions imprint documented the confluence of street soul, deep house, swing beat and jungle sounds emanating from the clubs and pirate radio signals. Oh, interesting. So it's like a compilation from an indie label. The artists it lists, none of them I've heard of. It's not the sort of music I particularly like. Lovers Rock is kind of, an offshoot of reggae. I suppose that'd be alright. Jazz funk, no, not for me. Sound system reggae, yeah. Hip hop, yeah. New Jack Swing, not so much. Garage, very, very few in the garage or garage genre. It's a double LP, that. Looks an interesting thing, but not one for me. Moving on to the penultimate one here, and if I've missed any, then that's probably because this website's missed it and they shouldn't have done. But this is Rise by Gabrielle. I remember the title track that got to #1 in the UK singles chart. This album is coming out on yellow vinyl tomorrow, and it is Gabrielle's third album. She had a nice voice, talented singer, but nothing I was into. And finally, we've got one. I do actually have this album. It was kind of impulsive, but I've got it on MD. It's Northern Star by Melanie C. So this was her debut solo album, released I think the year before the final Spice Girls album came out. Some really good singles on here, actually. I Turn to You, the dance mix that was doing the rounds at the time, certainly was a really good single. And Never Be the Same Again, that was from this album, the duet with Lisa Left Eye Lopez from TLC. And the title track itself, Northern Star. So yeah, I've got a couple of the Spice Girls solo albums. I've got this one and Jerry Halliwell's first one, and this one was certainly the strongest, even though there was one or two decent singles off Jerry's as well. But I really only bought those on mini disc because I had collected the Spice Girls albums on MD, and I was able to get the Jerry and Mel C ones at a relatively cheap price. Cheap for mini disc anyway, not particularly cheap for anything else. That's out on transparent vinyl, so it might be like clear, clear vinyl. And that's it. So that's your National Album Day. God, I've been talking about this for a long time. With a few edits, then I'll be able to get this video down to a slightly more acceptable length. Some interesting stuff there. So yeah, like I say, the Cause and Robert Miles were the must-haves for me, but there is others that I would be tempted by, as I've mentioned. I think, there's at least a couple in there that are kind of deliberately obscure, so that it kind of feels a bit kind of record store day-ish, because you get your kind of mixture of well-known acts for RSD with the sort of people you don't really know about because they're a bit indie. And I think that's what National Album Day have tried to do here, but with it being all 90s related, they've been kind of limited really. But you know, some big names in there, some big albums. I think that's a fantastic selection really. I do think literally there's something for everybody there. Let me know in the comments if you're going to try and pick up any of these. It's not really kind of like an event like RSD is. But RSD, it gets a lot of coverage on YouTube from American channels in particular, but it is a worldwide event. This one is just for us, it's a British event. I don't know if there is similar things that happen elsewhere in the world. I don't think there's an American National Album Day, but I could be wrong, correct me if I am. But that's going to do it for me really. I just wanted to run through those and give my thoughts on all the releases, and let you know that the event is happening tomorrow, but you know, you'll be able to pick, I think, the majority of this stuff up weeks, months after the fact, and hopefully there'll be some good discounts coming along, especially as, you know, we head towards Black Friday in November and Christmas and January sales, etc. Thank you all for watching. Do hope you enjoyed this slightly different video from me today. I want to say special thanks as always to my wonderful subscribers and generous patrons. I'm not going to bother going on about the description text box. I'll just now say my goodbyes and ask that you will join me again next year, if I do it again next year. And if you enjoyed this, then I will. Even if the next year's, even if 2024's National Album Day doesn't appeal to me as much as this 90s themed one does, but I would still go through all the releases. So leave me some feedback in the comments, and please will you join me next time for my next music related video. Cheers everyone. See ya!